There are a ton of moments in animated movies that make us pause for a second and wonder what exactly happened. You know, something that could have been slipped in like a joke from the animators, or something bizarre that maybe even those who made the film didn't even realize was going in. Pixar is full of these weird little happenings that, if you think about it for too long, turn a little too strange for our liking. We hope you enjoy this list, and to make sure to subscribe to keep up to date with the latest from ScreenRant. Have you checked out our friends over at Crafty Hackers? They have some of the most amazing DIY crafts and lifestyle hacks to make your life easier. Pay them a visit after you watch our awesome video.
You know, because thunder always comes after lightning.
There's something odd about animated movies where some of the everyday objects are sentient characters, and some are just regular objects. Cars is one of those movies, where some cars we know and love, and yet there are tons of regular ones being driven around, seemingly devoid of personalities. One thing particularly disturbing is how Mater lives in a junkyard, surrounded by piles of discarded car parts. Isn't that the human equivalent of living in a cemetery, but instead of buried underground, there are just a bunch of stray body parts everywhere? And he's totally cool with it. Another terrifying example of this comes from the first Toy Story movie. Now, we all know Sid is a sadistic little kid who likes to experiment on his toys and will very possibly grow up to become a serial killer, but there is something about the toys themselves that makes it even darker. Following the rules from the world of Toy Story, all of the poor toys that he mutilates are actually alive and can feel literally everything that's happening to them, even if they can't move in his presence. There is barely a person alive who was able to make it through the opening montage from Up without turning into a pile of tears, and for good reason. It's incredibly affecting, going from hopeful and heartwarming and getting progressively more and more sad until we just can't take it anymore. One of the worst parts is how Ellie is shown to actually get pregnant and then have a miscarriage. It's a very adult subject matter for a children's movie, and a painful reveal as to why the two never had children of their own. The sadness didn't stop there, though, as we all know how that montage ended. And we understand Ellie had to die in order to leave Carl heartbroken and alone and in need of an adventure for the entire movie to happen. But my God, why did they have to make it so devastating? Poor Ellie dies just as soon as the audience has had the chance to really invest emotionally in their relationship. And it just tears your heart out if you think about it too long. Animation has the power to get away with things that would either be way too gruesome to see or way too expensive to film in live action. It can make extreme violence and death seem funny. See all of the Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner cartoons if you need proof. And one moment in The Incredibles is one of these flukes. When Edna Mode is explaining why she doesn't design capes, we see the pretty violent deaths of a number of superheroes because of their capes. The concept of Ratatouille is a little gross when taken out of context, but over the course of the movie we learn to love the talented and adorable Remy. But the rest of France clearly doesn't feel the same, as evidenced when Remy's dad shows him what exactly reality is like as a rat, by taking him to the storefront of a pest control company with a collection of dead rats caught in traps, hanging cruelly in the window. Suddenly, it's a little less Pixar and a little more Handmaid's Tale. There are way too many dark Toy Story moments to list, as these movies are not afraid to really get in there and make us feel. But some are just so intense that we can't not mention them. The moment when Buzz discovers that he is just a toy and not a super spaceman after all is just so startlingly human and sad. He has a full-on existential crisis and then hurts himself trying to prove that he can fly. It's grim, to say the least. The origin story of why Nemo is his father's only offspring and the explanation as to where Nemo's mother is could not be more upsetting if it tried. Imagining Nemo's dad having to explain to his only son that his brave mother and all of his brothers and sisters were brutally murdered by a barracuda, leaving only Nemo left to carry all the weight of his father's expectations and broken heart is an extremely traumatizing thought. Every movie has to have an antagonist, or some kind of villain for the hero to overcome. In A Bug's Life, that villain is Hopper. The evil grasshopper makes all of the ants do his work for him, and essentially steals all of the fruits of their hard labor. But he gets his in the end, and while we are happy to see him go, it doesn't make the way it happens any less disturbing. Hopper antagonizes a bird, proceeds to rip him apart and feed the pieces to her babies. Another Pixar villain who will go down in history is Randall from Monsters, Inc. He's pretty much the only person or monster who could hate Little Boo, and hate her he does. Especially when he puts her into the terrifying machine called the Scream Extractor, and literally attempts to rip the screams of a little child out of her. While it obviously doesn't exist in real life, it's a pretty heartless act to have to watch, and really solidifies his place in the Bad Guy Hall of Fame.
Well, hello there. What's your name?
Mike Wazowski.
One more moment in Monsters, Inc. that really is very gruesome to go back and think about is actually somehow played as a joke in the movie. Sully watches what he thinks is Boo getting crushed in the trash compactor, and then cradles the cube of compacted garbage and cries as though it is the body of the little girl he cares so much about. It all turns out okay in the end, but boy, that must have been a seriously shocking experience for Sully. WALL-E is another one of those Pixar movies that just rips your heart out over and over again, and its prophetic message about the state of the human race adds even more weight. The moment when it's revealed that WALL-E has been left entirely alone on Earth, cleaning up the unspeakable mess on his own, and not only that, but he has gained sentience and all he really wants is some form of companionship, gives us a kind of feeling we'd rather just ignore. Not all of these weird Pixar moments have to be emotionally devastating, and every now and then we get one that's funny, thankfully. There's a moment in Toy Story 2 when Buzz first encounters the cowgirl Jessie that has become pretty infamous. When Jessie flies around and nails some impressive acrobatic moves in order to open the door, Buzz's wings pop open in a moment that everyone over the age of 7 will interpret as Buzz getting a little too excited for his own good. But the joy isn't long-lived, as Toy Story 2 has another tearjerker in store for us. The reveal of Jessie's backstory and how she came to be forgotten by the little girl who once loved her is a very, very sad moment, and really makes us understand why Jessie is so desperate to become part of a museum exhibit. That sense of being forgotten and cast aside is a pretty universal and deep-seated fear that we all have, and something none of us want to believe is possible. WALL-E seems like he was supposed to act as a bit of a wake-up call to us, to take care of our planet and ourselves, and to not put all of our faith in technology and corporations. This is particularly evident when, after the mutiny on the Axiom, the computer Otto reveals the fact it was given the order to keep humans in space forever, even if Earth became habitable again. It seems like it could be for survival, but it's more likely to keep the humans contained, and man is that disturbing. Pixar is all about showing us how much families will do to protect each other, and few movies do this better than The Incredibles. The moment in which Syndrome sends missiles to the ship containing the entire family except for Mr. Incredible, while Helen begs him to disengage them and save her children, is made all the more excruciating by the fact that Mr. Incredible has to listen, powerless, as he hears what he thinks his entire family getting murdered. They survive, but it's a horrible moment. Don't even get us started on Inside Out, which, while an amazing movie, is just determined to make its audience cry. Before we get to the moment everyone knows is coming, let's talk about Riley's parents for a second. We see that her mom is led by sadness, and her dad is led by rage. This might seem insignificant, or it might be a commentary on what happens to us as we age, eventually giving in and simply living life devoid of true joy and wonder. Ouch, Inside Out. Alright, here we go. The moment from Inside Out that we've all been dreading, but is just too good to leave out. When Joy and Bing Bong become trapped in the pit with all of Riley's forgotten memories, they start to fade away. Bing Bong, knowing Riley needs Joy in her life, sacrifices himself in order to help Joy escape the pit. It's beautiful and heartbreaking, and watching Bing Bong slowly disappear into nothingness is truly one of the saddest Pixar moments of all time. For a movie about cars, it's expected we're going to see a crash or two before the credits roll. But in Cars 3, when lightning is seen in a violent and extremely graphic racing accident, it's a bigger jolt than expected from a movie for kids. The way it's animated makes us really fear for Lightning's life, and even maybe envisioning ourselves experiencing a crash as life-altering as that one. It's a feeling that's better left alone, but the movie sure makes that difficult to do. Brave was a one-of-a-kind movie when it came out, and has been championed as one of the only Pixar or Disney films in which the heroine doesn't need to be rescued by a prince and actually has no interest in marriage. She is 15 after all. But one of the craziest things about the movie is that it isn't the witchcraft or the bears that are her hardest challenge, but her reality of living as a girl in the world that is truly her biggest hardship.
Keep gasping.
We all know and love Dory as the happy fish with short-term memory loss from Finding Nemo, and in Finding Dory, we finally got a peek into her mysterious backstory. But that doesn't mean it was going to be all fun and smiles as the moment when Dory is separated from her family by an undertow and they become desperate to find her. It's made even more sad by the fact that young Dory is impossibly cute with her big blinking eyes that we can't help but be heartbroken. The Good Dinosaur may not have been Pixar's most financially or commercially successful movie, but that doesn't mean it doesn't contain its share of classic Pixar devastation. The part in which we see Arlo and his dad attempting to escape a storm before Arlo's dad pushes his son into dry land and drowns in the flooded river is comparable to watching Mufasa die in The Lion King, and some of us still aren't over that one. We know that most parents would die to save their children, but seeing it happen is just too much. Cars 2 went in a slightly different direction than the first and third installments, and became more of a James Bond-style spy movie, complete with maniacal bad guys like Professor Z. There's one scene in particular between Z and Rod Torque Redline that leaves a bad taste in our mouth. And maybe that's because we literally watched the professor torture Redline to death. He even explains it in graphic detail as he fills Redline with toxic gas until he explodes. Man, what a way to go. One last moment from WALL-E that seems sweet but is pretty tragic is when WALL-E and Eve are still on Earth. After she has collected the plant sample, Eve has completed her mission, and her system shuts down until she's retrieved. WALL-E doesn't understand this though, and is so enamored that he has an entire first date with her, while she's totally unresponsive and shut down. We feel so much for WALL-E and his loneliness that this moment is almost too much to bear. Finally, just when you think things are going to be okay, Toy Story 3 comes along to ruin everybody's lives. The moment when the toys finally escape the terrifying daycare, and we think that they're actually free, but instead realize that they've escaped into a conveyor belt leading to an incinerator, is bad enough. But when they all seem to accept their death and hold hands as they wait to burn alive, takes things to a whole other level. They live, of course, but this moment really takes the cake.
It's not my fault.
Hey, before we sign off, don't forget to check out our friends over at Crafty Hacker's YouTube channel. If you're all about making life easier for yourself, they have some amazing DIY crafts and lifestyle hacks that will help you do exactly that. Leave them a like and let them know ScreenRant sent you while you're there. Well, there you have it. Some Pixar moments that might just be better off left alone. What did you think of this list? Are there any moments that stuck with you that we should know about? Or do you agree that these just give us way too many feels? Let us know in the comments and make sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell to keep up with the latest awesome ScreenRant content.